Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Lisa Oligas, your host. In this edition, self-care versus healthcare. It's a concept Dr. Robert McNab is getting behind as he opens McNab Wellness, a clinic designed to help people learn about their health risk early and how to invest in the future of their health now. Many of you will recognize Dr. McNab from his appearances at the Freeman Health System media briefings during the pandemic, where he served as Director of COVID Services. But he is also board certified in lifestyle medicine. He joins us now to talk about the importance of self-care and prevention when it comes to your health. Thank you for joining us.
Lisa, it's good to be here.
This is an exciting time. So what is lifestyle medicine for those of us who haven't really heard about this as a board certification?
Absolutely. So lifestyle board certification is a fairly new certification within the past 10 or 15 years. And there's approximately 10 to 15,000 diplomats in the United States at this time. So it's growing pretty exponentially. And it really is a response to the problems that we have with healthcare in America, which is, we're up to about $3.4 trillion per year, about 18% of our GDP spent on healthcare, and that number just goes up every year. And the reason is because we're investing on the back end. When people are desperately ill and sick, this is where we're putting all of our resources. Where we know is if we can invest those resources early on to keep you healthy, that you're going to have a much better health outcome at a much cheaper price point, and you're going to enjoy the experience a lot more.
You're calling it reactionary medicine is what we currently is how we look at things.
Yeah,
we have a problem, we have to try and fix it.
So the difference between proactively protecting your health and building that resource versus reactionary, now I have an illness that I need to deal with, and that could be a chronic condition.
So that's called disease management typically.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is that difference between self-care then and healthcare? So what are we looking at? And you were involved in the pandemic. Did that give you any insight as to why we need to go toward more prevention? Did you feel like you learned something from there that like, hey, people need to be more fit?
Yes. I think that the pandemic really opened my eyes in a lot of ways to where we are with our overall fitness and health in the United States. The pandemic was terribly timed because of how chronically ill we have gotten. One in two Americans have at least one chronic disease, and one in six Americans have, 4 or 5 health problems. And so coming into a major pandemic, how healthy you are, the health reserve you have, really in large part determined how well are you going to do with this. And I think that was really played out large, I think, for all of us trying to manage those COVID patients and helping them and seeing who did the best and who fared the worst.
Those in better health overall could make it through it better.
Oh, absolutely. And when you really look at the data now, it's even more compelling that that's still an issue, because what we have found about COVID is that it didn't just affect a lot of people that were susceptible to it and what happened to them happened, but it also seems like it has accelerated people who have chronic diseases. So, if you had heart disease, being exposed to COVID, even if you've had a mild case, can accelerate that into a much more significant disease. And of course, the punchline is anything that we can do to limit our chronic illnesses or avoid them is just going to make us healthier and more resilient.
And a better life. You're promoting 6 pillars of wellness. Tell us what those 6 pillars are and what they describe.
So when you were talking about self-care, lifestyle medicine is based around the concept that the habits that you build into your lifestyle are going to help maintain your health reserve. And that really has been brought to focus on 6 major pillars. The amount of activity that you do regularly throughout your daily living, and not necessarily exercise, but being active. Do you get out in the community? Are you gardening? Are you going for a walk? Did you walk that dog or did you send it out?
Simple walking can make a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. I think the things that you can do consistently in your life make the biggest difference. 4 hours in the gym is nothing compared to 30-minute walk 5 days a week. So activity is a major pillar. Next is nutrition. What you put in your body in large part determines your health. Over the course of 80 years, the average American eats 80,000 pounds of food, which is about 24 cars worth of weight. And when you think about 80,000 pounds of exposure to something, that better be a good exposure. So the healthier that we can eat, It's not that the occasional treat's not a good idea. You gotta live a little, but you want a large portion of that to be things that actually nourish your body and help you maintain your health. So nourishment is a significant pillar, and I think that people would just automatically say that makes sense to me. But other things that aren't quite as intuitive are things like stress management and social connectedness. We know that our risk of heart disease goes up when we're unconnected to our communities. Wow. And so mental health problems, depression, when these things aren't checked, it's just not making you feel bad. It's not a mental health disorder by itself. It also impacts your cardiovascular health and your high blood pressure and these things. So being socially connected and being able to really properly manage stress is so key. Now, of course, avoiding things like toxins, and I think we all know that tobacco, excessive alcohol, drugs of abuse, these things are all bad for us as well. But I think the one thing that people really do not understand the impact is sleep. Are you getting enough sleep? In America, because of hardcore American work values, we'll sleep when we're dead, and we can put it off until tomorrow. But the thing is, if you're not getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep, you're increasing your cardiac mortality by about 110%.
Wow.
And it's not just did you get into bed, it's what was the quality of that sleep. If you put the phone in the charger, but it doesn't charge, you still got a dead phone. And if you get into bed and you stay there for 8 hours, but the quality of your sleep is poor, that's going to impact your risk of dementia, your risk of high blood pressure, and your risk of cardiovascular disease as well.
It needs to be restorative.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of our ability to maintain our health is absolutely the recharge time that we get when we sleep. And when you add up the amount of sleep that you get over the course of your lifetime, it's 30 years.
Wow.
You need to do it well.
Yeah. You've told me appearances can be deceiving. You're in great shape. You go to the gym, but you yourself had your own little health incident that kind of told you, hey, it's not just what you get at the gym. So can you share that experience with you, what you learned?
Oh, absolutely. Like a lot of Americans, I really think that we've kind of bought into this idea that what you see is what you get. And if you look really healthy, if you look physically attractive and fit, then you probably are healthy. And I think that, you could make the argument that seeing somebody who has well-developed musculature, okay, that is a part of health. But what you can't see is something that's probably more important, which is your metabolic health and your vascular health. The average lifespan of a bodybuilder is about 48 years.
Wow.
Which is about half of what you should expect, right? Or 2/3 for sure. And when we see these professional athletes pass away at an early age, it's frequently because of cardiac issues. It's because of vascular issues. And when you're healthy on the outside, but the plumbing is inflamed, which chronic inflammation is a major driver of disease process. That is how you get somebody who can run a marathon and then have a heart attack.
So what happened with you, and how did you find that you had some kind of issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started exercising and getting fit, I really liked the physical changes. I liked being stronger. I liked being able to go mountain climbing and kayaking and spending more time doing activities with my loved ones. And I thought that I was fit. It had kind of created this illusion that, well, I've maintained my health because I look good and I feel good. But then it turned out that all my laboratories, my blood sugars were creeping up. My cholesterol was nowhere near where it needed to be. I come from a family of people who have a predilection towards diabetes and heart disease. My father had his first heart attack at 39.
Wow.
And so all those metabolic things weren't as impacted by just exercise and activity the way that I would want them to. And so I don't think that we can judge a book by its cover. You really need somebody to really look at your metabolic health and tell you, are you on the process of getting healthier, or are you slipping off the road?
All right, well, a lot of those things are things you can find out at McNab Wellness. Dr. McNab gave us a tour of his wellness clinic. Let's take a look. Enter the door of McNab Wellness, and it doesn't look like the typical doctor's office waiting room.
So this is really the hub of our clinic. We do a lot of education and a lot of training and consultation with patients to understand their nutrition, to understand what's going right and what's going wrong and where there are opportunities for health. And so, instead of a crammed physical exam room, this is our classroom.
Part of that education is about food and a more positive approach to eating well.
Yeah, this is a counseling plan that is
I think going to just really be very popular with people, because when we think about a diet, you think about taking things away from people. Don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat as much. The full plate diet is about adding foods. The more fiber-filled foods that you can add into your diet, the fuller you feel, the better your nutrition will be, and the more weight you will lose.
A big screen TV is an educational tool when it comes to anatomy.
The whole point of this big screen is to be able to understand what's going on with you. And sometimes, looking at the anatomy makes a tremendous training opportunity. You get to look at, oh, look, these are the ventricles of your heart. These are the chambers. Those are your valves. If you have a leaky valve, what does that mean to your health, and why is it something that you need to be aware of or even have fixed?
Patients learn their risk of heart trouble and other illnesses through ultrasound. McNab says modern technology has made ultrasound easier and more accessible. He calls it a game changer for use in exams that can be early predictors of later problems.
Because I think when the patient can see their own anatomy, they can see the problem. For example, if you have gallstones and swelling of the gallbladder or inflammation and fluid around it, you can show them that, and they understand, well, why are they experiencing the pain and symptoms that they are, and now they know what they need to do about it because they've seen it with their own eyes. Her valves are functioning nicely. You can see there's no fluid around the outside of her heart. The top of the screen there is part of her liver. So you can get a really nice assessment of the 4 chambers of somebody's heart and how are they functioning. So ultrasound can really help you out, because sometimes as people's hearts weaken, they don't really have symptoms for quite some time.
Dr. McNab also puts the body to the test to assess physical strengths and weaknesses. He says people often neglect the heart muscle.
We can measure something called zone 2, which is where you start to switch from aerobic metabolic function to anaerobic function. And we can measure that by the level of work that she has to do to start to build up lactic acid in her bloodstream. And the thing is that is trainable.
Dr. McNab says in exercise, form is important to avoid injury. And between desk work and a sedentary lifestyle, many people lose core strength. So, the bird dog test.
This is part of a series of 3 exercises that we can look at to test people and to strengthen them for all their components of their core, their back muscles, their flank muscles, and their abdominal muscles as well. You need all 3 of those units to have excellent core strength. Let's touch our knee to our elbow.
But appearances can be deceiving, so the Wellness Clinic conducts an in-body scan with a machine they've nicknamed Wally.
It remembers me from the last time in here, so I don't have to re-enter anything. It just remembers it.
Place your heels on the rear sole electrodes.
So my heels have
Grab
to go
the
here.
handles. Place your thumbs on the oval electrodes. Keep your arms straight.
What it's doing is it's measuring how easily does the electricity flow through the compartments of her body. And so, that thing was on. So what this does is it's able to tell you how much of her mass is water, how much of it is muscle or lean mass, and how much of it is actual fat and body fat in the compartments that are trunk, upper extremities, lower extremities. And so this really gives you a much better idea of, well, what health metrics do you need to follow? Do you need to gain muscle? Do you need to lose fat? Do you need to do both of those things?
So the next stop on the tour is the phlebotomy room and lab testing.
And part of our longevity is knowing what problems do we have and addressing them before they become serious impeders to our health. We've seen that you can't really use physical appearance to tell whether somebody's healthy or not. The average bodybuilder only lives for 47, 48 years and they look great. So there's a difference between muscular health and metabolic health. And so the way that we really look at metabolic health is by looking at markers of insulin resistance. What are your lipid panel looking like? We know that cholesterol particles are what build up inside of our blood vessels and lead to the most common types of injury that end American lives, heart attacks, strokes, that sort of thing, peripheral vascular disease. And so getting ahead of these things and knowing very early on, are you insulin resistant? Are you on a pathway to diabetes? Are your nutrients appropriate for your health? You know, what's your vitamin D level? Are you getting enough sunlight? All these things can be measured with laboratories.
Your lab work might show a vitamin D deficiency. The last stop on the tour offers a fix for that with infrared light, which offers even more than the vitamin D.
Another really important thing that sunlight exposure does for us is it exposes us to infrared light. And infrared light is very potent stimulator to help us increase melatonin levels. Now, inside of our cells, melatonin is the most powerful anti-inflammatory, antioxidant chemical that we produce. And we need this to help us repair and function at a cellular level. And so if you're not getting enough outside exposure, then you might very well be both vitamin D deficient, but you also might be very low on antioxidants. And then if you get ill, that's going to make that tremendously more difficult for you to stay safe. And so infrared therapies like this mimic that exposure to the sun. And very interestingly, unlike ultraviolet light that's not going to penetrate Elizabeth's clothes, infrared radiation does. So this will go right through her clothing and will help stimulate that. And also, it's very relaxing. You know, you listen to some nice music, this gets into your muscles and helps them relax. It helps with low back pain and muscular discomfort. And it just really helps you take it down a notch and really start to remove some of that stress. So you're doing some great things for your psyche, as well as you're helping yourself be more resilient against infections.
Elizabeth Love helped demonstrate the services at McNab Wellness. When we come back, she will demonstrate how to add fiber to your diet as she cooks up a healthy overnight oats medley to power up your breakfast. As we go to break, another look at the 6 pillars of wellness. We're back with Dr. Rob McNab and Elizabeth Love, who is a registered nurse who's earned a certification in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University and is the driver of nutrition elements at McNab Wellness. Thanks for joining us, Elizabeth.
No, thank you for having me.
Welcome back, Dr. McNab. So you are a fan of fiber, and you're going to show us a recipe for oats that you can actually make in advance. That's kind of a good idea for those of us in a hurry.
It is. One of the best parts of nutrition, or the biggest parts of your day of nutrition, is getting a good breakfast. And lots of times families are stressed in the morning. They don't have a lot of time. So this is something you can make on Sunday. You can put the base recipe in the refrigerator, and then you can top it in the morning with whatever you like. And so you can change it up with different toppings.
Oats are fiber.
They are. Lots of fiber. Fiber is good for weight management. It makes you feel full. And so you eat less because you're taking in more fiber. Helps you lower your cholesterol. So it's got great uses for heart health. I'm missing one.
Yeah, well, it decreases your blood sugars.
Even better.
Right. Fiber, when you eat it with the sugars, like we're going to add a little maple syrup, it helps keep that from spiking.
And that's what we want to know, because there's a lot of people out there who might crave something sweet or crave something salty. There are things you can add in that are still healthy. So give us some of the ideas of what we're going to put in here in this recipe. What do we need to make this?
Well, first, let's do the base recipe. This is about 1/2 cup of rolled oats. Now, you can use steel cut oats, but you have to leave them in the refrigerator a little longer, usually about 2 days, for them to soak up enough liquid to be not so chewy.
Edible.
So we're going to put in a cup of water. Now, the recipe says almond milk or some kind of plant-based milk, and you can get those either from like a powder or from a carton.
Soy milk.
I'm going to put in protein powder, a plant-based pea protein powder, and a couple scoops of that, and that'll make it nice and creamy.
So why wouldn't we want to use milk? Regular cow's milk.
Regular cow's milk, it's higher in saturated fat and than your plant-based milk, and it has more calories in it.
Okay, so we're saving calories.
So we're saving calories and we're sticking to unsaturated fats.
Okay, and we mix this up.
We're going to put a half a teaspoon of vanilla in there. I like the vanilla flavor. This is really optional.
But who doesn't like vanilla? It usually tastes good. It's a good flavor base.
And then you can put your sweetener in the day of making it, or you can wait to top it off.
Okay.
So, but I'm going to go ahead and put some maple syrup in there because
Maple syrup.
I like maple syrup. And we have honey, and then there's Splenda too if you have a problem with honey or maple syrup.
And so I know I tried putting a little syrup on my oatmeal, which I thought, oh, I shouldn't put too much. But you're putting 2 tablespoons, right?
Yes, because I like it sweet.
But it's a good sweetener.
Yes, it's a plant-based sweetener. Because you're mixing it with the oats, it won't spike your blood sugar as if you just ate it plain or on a pancake.
And how flexible can we be with the ingredients here? I mean,
Well, if these turn out to be fairly thin, so you can add less water if you like a thicker oatmeal.
so this one is made with Splenda, and it just kind of looks like almost like a milk product. But when you add the other things, it kind of absorbs. And
Right.
you're making it cold, but you can heat it up if somebody
Right.
wanted a warm
Right.
oatmeal breakfast.
You can eat it cold or warm. I like it warm. Rob likes cold.
Okay.
And then you just put it in the refrigerator and you can let it sit
And it
for several
absorbs.
days and it starts to absorb and thicken up. Oh, I forgot the flaxseed. Oh, wait a minute.
Flaxseed.
Flaxseed is a healthy omega-3
Okay.
and that'll also help thicken it up.
And it doesn't necessarily change the flavor when you add something like flaxseed.
It doesn't.
Okay.
But it adds fiber and healthy fat.
So what are the biggest benefits to a whole food plant-based diet, which I know you advocate?
So a whole food plant-based diet, the only place that you get fiber is your fruits, your vegetables, your legumes, and your whole grains. And so when you take in all of that fiber, you're also getting a lot of other nutrients like protein, and you're getting healthy fats with that fiber. When you eat meat or other of those products, they don't necessarily have fiber in them.
So you can put and get a lot of those servings in. So what else would you add to your oatmeal that would give you these extra servings of all these things in one day?
Okay, well, do you want the honey?
Sure.
Okay, I'll take the maple syrup.
Honey?
I'll give this one to you.
Okay.
And pretty much add anything. There's a Chunky Monkey recipe where you can add walnuts and a little chocolate and a banana.
Ooh, yum.
So
So then would you add that to the honey-based one, or is all these bases are interactive with?
you can use
any topping?
any one you want to.
So we have nuts down here. How are those helpful to use?
Those have healthy fats in them too. They add flavor and crunch. So your peanuts you can make into like a PB&J. Add a little peanut butter, creamy peanut butter, and smash up some of your fruit and put it in there. So you can make like a peanut butter and jelly.
Okay.
And that adds healthy fat, of course, to your diet in the morning, and all of that makes you feel fuller, so you'll want to eat less later in the morning. Your donuts and some of those really sugary things, you have a crash later on, and it makes you hungry again.
This gives you energy.
This will give you energy without that crash later in the morning.
How important is it for people to kind of like record or take note of how they feel after they eat? Because is that something you notice when you eat the right stuff?
As you start to add in fiber and those things, if you're not used to it, it can make you feel a little bloated, and it can make you feel a little gassy. So then you just slow down adding the fiber. But also eating some of those unhealthy things, keeping track of how you feel after those things so that you don't forget.
You might be still hungry.
Yourself.
You've eaten that bag of chips and it didn't really.
Right, didn't satisfy you. And it's important to remember those things for when you want to have your next snack.
So one thing I would say is, we go out to the YMCA and we do HIIT classes on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the demographic of the people with that class is somewhere between 20 and 50s and 60s, and a lot of them are much younger than we are, and the question that they frequently ask is, we can't keep up with you. How do you have so much energy in your 50s? And I tell them, it's the oatmeal, it's the fiber,
It's what you're
we
eating.
eat.
So
the
what's the
plants.
dark chocolate recipe that we're putting in here?
Oh, this is the Chunky Monkey.
Chunky Monkey. So what else goes in there besides the dark chocolate?
The dark chocolate, walnuts.
Walnuts. What else?
So, and then a banana.
And a banana.
You slap a slice.
And the whole banana.
I put the whole banana in. Rob only eats half of the
Only
banana.
half a banana.
Banana's a really strong flavor
They
when
really
it's part
are.
of
Right,
something.
right. So
One thing that people don't know is that walnuts are actually very good for your brain health.
Really?
Yeah, it actually decreases your risk of dementia.
So many of us crave salt or dairy. You've mentioned some of these, like other milk products for the creaminess. What else can add creaminess to, say, another food you might be having, like, say, a salad? I mean, everybody likes the ranch dressing. What are some things that you could use as alternatives? Same is true for maybe salt. What seasonings are good to throw in there so that we don't want to make something salty or that don't add salt?
Well, I use a lot of cashews in cooking. I use them, I mix them, I blend them up with a little water, and
Wow.
that thickens things up. These things right here can create the same consistency. That's a cashew base, so you can make a thick cream with that, and then add seasonings to that to make like a creamy type of dressing.
So a good blender food processor is a good idea.
It is a good idea to invest in it. And then instead of adding salt,
That's a nice amount of dark chocolate.
well,
I
let's
feel
put
like-
that in there.
Lots of antioxidants in dark chocolate. You
Okay.
really should think of dark chocolate as a health food.
Oh, I will.
I do.
I will, for sure. That's a great health food. So nuts, chocolate, I mean, it almost does sound like a candy bar.
It does, it does. And lots of people like a nice sweet breakfast.
So is it going to be mushy? If you heat this up, does it dry up? It gets a little thicker? What's the consistency when you typically eat this?
Well, I like it nice. I like the oatmeal thin, and then I like to have the big chunks of
There we go.
of all the toppings in there.
I like
So
mine
I
a little
guess-
bit thicker, almost on its way to
It is.
being
It
an
almost looks
oatmeal
like a
cookie.
good ice cream with toppings, which is awesome.
You can just stir. You don't have to shake it up like I do.
And
Definitely
if you've
stir
ever
it
had
up.
like Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey ice cream or anything like that, this would be pretty similar,
similar?
except for probably far more nutritious for you.
Right. You don't have the buttermilk or the butter in there as well.
The cream.
So you have one called Almond Joy. What goes in that one?
That's chocolate and coconut
Yum.
and almonds. So you can put.
Lots of recipes. We'll share them when we post on Facebook and our website. Thank you both for joining us and sharing these recipes. So when it talks to when you're thinking about what you eat, do these necessarily cost more? I mean, you've got lots of fruits over there you can put in there. Is frozen fruit as good?
Frozen
as-
fruit is just as good. In fact, sometimes, lots of times, it's sweeter than what you'll get in fresh fruit because it's picked at the height of its ripeness, rather than some of these fruits are picked before they're ripe so that they can ripen en route to the store.
Yeah.
So you can get riper, sweeter fruits if you buy them frozen. Frozen vegetables are just fine too. Just make sure you look at the ingredients. Some of those fruits sometimes add sugar to it, and you don't want the ones with sugar. They're
Certainly
just,
with canned fruit, you might have that syrup added.
exactly.
So better to go frozen than canned,
Better to go frozen.
or look for no sugar added.
Yeah, make sure you're looking at the labels. Become a label detective.
With everything you do. Well, thank you both for sharing everything about McNab Wellness and sharing this recipe with our viewers, and thank you for being here and for all you're doing.
Thank you.
We're glad to
Thanks
have you.
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
For more info, you can go to McNabWellness.com. Thanks for joining us for Newsmakers. Have a great day.